Your recent interview with Dr. Jordan Peterson has now been seen by over 10 million people. I'm curious how you feel about the reach of that interview and the reaction that it's clearly generated.
You know, you're bound to look back and think, oh, I could have done that a bit differently, couldn't I? But, you know, the meme's getting a bit tedious now.
You can't fight the internet.
Jordan Peterson, you've said that men need to, quote, grow the hell up. Tell me why.
Well, because there's nothing uglier than an old infant. People who don't grow up don't find the sort of meaning in their life that sustains them through difficult times, and they are certain to encounter difficult times. And they're left bitter and resentful and without purpose and adrift and hostile and resentful and vengeful and arrogant and deceitful and of no use to themselves and of no use to anyone else and no partner for a woman.
I mean, that sounds pretty bad. You're saying
It's
there's a
bad.
crisis of masculinity? I mean, what do you do about it?
You help people understand why it's necessary and important for them to grow up and adopt responsibility, why that isn't a shake your finger and get your act together sort of thing, why it's more like a delineation of the kind of destiny that makes life worth living. I've been telling young men...
And it's mostly, you admit, it's mostly men listening.
What I've been telling young men is that there's an actual reason why they need to grow up, which is that they have something to offer.
So what's gone wrong then?
I don't think that young men hear words of encouragement. Some of them never in their entire lives, as far as I can tell. That's what they tell me. And the fact that the words that I've been speaking, the YouTube lectures that I've done and put online, for example, have had such a dramatic impact is an indication that young men are starving for this sort of message, because like, why in the world would they have to derive it from a lecture on YouTube? You know, they're not being taught that it's important to develop yourself.
But does it bother you that your audience is predominantly male? Isn't that a bit divisive?
It's no more divisive than the fact that YouTube is primarily male and Tumblr is primarily female.
That's the way it is.
Well, it's just an observation.
What's in it for the women, though?
Well, what sort of partner do you want? Do you want an overgrown child? Or do you want someone to contend with that's going to help you? Women deeply want men who are competent and powerful. And I don't mean power in that they can exert tyrannical control over others. That's not power. That's just corruption. Power is competence. And why in the world would you not want a competent partner?
Let me move on to another debate that's been very controversial for you. You got in trouble for refusing to call trans men and women by their preferred personal pronouns.
It's not actually true. I got in trouble because I said I would not follow the compelled speech dictates of the federal and provincial government.
Why should your right to freedom of speech trump a trans person's right not to be offended?
Because in order to be able to think, you have to risk being offensive. I mean, look at the conversation we're having right now. You know, like you're certainly willing to risk offending me in the pursuit of truth. Why should you have the right to do that? It's been rather uncomfortable.
Well, I'm very glad I put you on the spot.
Well,
I'm very glad that I have exercised my freedom of speech.
You get my point. It's like you're doing what you should do, which is digging a bit to see what the hell's going on. So and that is what you should do. But you're exercising your freedom of speech to certainly risk offending me. And that's fine. I think more power to you as far as I'm concerned.
So you haven't sat there and I'm just trying to work that out. I mean,
ha, gotcha.
You have got me. I'm trying to work that through in my head. Yeah, it took a while.
It did, yeah.
It took a while. You have voluntarily come into the studio and agreed to be questioned. Mm-hmm. A trans person in your class has come to your class and said they want to be called
That's never happened. And I would call them she.
So you would. So you've kind of changed your tune on that.
No, I said that right from the beginning. What I said at the beginning was that I was not going to cede the linguistic territory to radical leftists, regardless of whether or not it was put in law. That's what I said. And then the people who came after me said, oh, you must be transphobic and you'd mistreat a student in your class. It's like, I never mistreated a student in my class. I'm not transphobic, and that isn't what I said.
Well, except you've also called trans campaigners authoritarian, haven't you? I mean, isn't that
Well, only in the
insen-
broader context of my claims that radical leftist ideologues are authoritarian,
Yes,
which
but
they are.
You're saying someone who's trying to work out their gender identity, who may well have struggled with that, had quite a
No
tough
doubt
time
have
over the
struggled
years.
with it, yeah.
You're comparing them with, Chairman Mao, who
No, just the
saw the
activists.
deaths of millions of people. Well,
Just the
even if the
activists.
activists, they're trans people too. They have a right to say these things. I mean, this is grossly insensitive. Under Mao, millions of people died.
Right.
I mean, there's no comparison between
That's-
Mao and a trans activist, is there?
Why not?
Because trans activists aren't killing millions of people?
The philosophy that's guiding their utterances is the same philosophy.
You're saying that trans activists
No.
could lead to the deaths of millions of people? What
No,
they're
I'm
doing-
saying that the philosophy that drives their utterances is the same philosophy that already has driven us to the deaths of millions.
Okay, tell us how that philosophy is in any way comparable.
Sure, that's no problem. The first thing is that the philosophy presumes that group identity is paramount. That's the fundamental philosophy that drove the Soviet Union and Maoist China. And it's the fundamental philosophy of the left-wing activists. It's identity politics. It doesn't matter who you are as an individual, it matters who you are in terms of your group identity.
You're just
That's
saying these
murderous.
things, though, to provoke, aren't you? I mean,
Not
you
a
are
bit.
a provocateur.
I never said
You're like
anything.
the alt-right that you hate to be compared to. You want to stir things up.
I'm only a provocateur insofar as when I say what I believe to be true, it's provocative. I don't provoke. I'm not interested in provoking.
But what
Not in
about the thing
least.
about, fighting and the lobster? Tell us about the lobster.
Well, the first chapter I have in my book is called Stand Up Straight with Your Shoulders Back. And it's an injunction to adopt a stance of ready engagement with the world and to reflect that in your posture. And the reason that I write about lobsters is because there's this idea that hierarchical structures are a sociological construct of the Western patriarchy. And that is so untrue that it's almost unbelievable. And I use the lobster as an example. Lobsters exist in hierarchies, and they have a nervous system attuned to the hierarchy. And that nervous system runs on serotonin, just like our nervous systems do. And the nervous system of the lobster and of the human being is so similar that
Let me just get this
antidepressants...
straight. You're saying that we should organise our societies along the lines of the lobsters.
And that nervous system runs on serotonin, just like our nervous systems do. And the nervous system of the lobster and the human being is so similar that antidepressants work on lobsters. And it's part of my attempt to demonstrate that the idea of hierarchy has absolutely nothing to do with sociocultural construction, which it doesn't.
Let me just get this straight. You're saying that we should organise our societies along the lines of the lobsters.
I'm saying that it's inevitable that there will be continuity in the way that animals and human beings organize their structures. It's absolutely inevitable. And there is 1/3 of a billion years of evolutionary history behind that. Right? That's so long that 1/3 of a billion years ago, there weren't even trees. It's a long time. You have a mechanism in your brain that runs on serotonin that's similar to the lobster mechanism that tracks your status. And the higher your status, the better your emotions are regulated. So as your serotonin levels increase, you feel more positive emotion and less negative emotion.
So you're saying, like the lobsters, we're hardwired as men and women to do certain things.
No, I'm not saying there's nothing we can do about it, because it's like in a chess game, right? There's lots of things that you can do, although you can't break the rules of the chess game and continue to play chess. Your biological nature is somewhat like that, is it sets the rules of the game, but within those rules you have a lot of leeway.